one of the advantages of SaaS is that you have shorter implementation time. And we have a couple of data points here that show that the average of a 6-month implementation for the average SaaS implementation versus 18 months for an on-premise solution. That's a pretty significant material difference in implementation time. Typically, as I mentioned before, you have lower upfront costs with the SaaS model. So you've got that subscription-based fee structure with no upfront license costs that you're purchasing. And on the on-premise side, on the other hand, you have a lot more costs, not only in terms of buying the software upfront, paying for it all at once upfront, but also in the infrastructure build-out that you typically have to go with to build out the IT infrastructure to support your ERP solutions. And then the total cost of ownership, it's kind of a mixed bag, to be honest with you, when you compare on-premise to SaaS in the cloud. And it really depends on what time frame you're looking at and how much you're considering your balance sheet. And I'll explain that here in just a second. When I talk about the time frame, if you're looking within the first 5 to 7 years, typically SaaS and the cloud solutions are going to be lower cost. Once you get outside of 5 or 7 years, that's where you kind of see a wash there, to where the longer-term, ongoing, recurring subscription fees can start to add up to where you could exceed your on-premise scenario after 7 years or so. A lot of companies are comfortable with that because they'd rather push out that cost delta and take advantage of the cost savings in those first several years. And then the second kind of total cost of ownership or financial consideration is your balance sheet. A lot of times companies are looking at their return on assets, and they may not want to have large capital costs up front, which would typically be an on-premise solution would be heavy on the capital investment side, whereas SaaS would be more of a recurring expense item. So a lot of CFOs look at that and say, hey, they'll make a decision based on balance sheet considerations like that. And then when you look at ROI, it typically does take a bit longer to get the full ROI in an on-premise solution. SaaS can provide an accelerated ROI because of the lower upfront costs. With deployment, especially when it comes to updates and upgrades as well, that's all customer managed on the on-premise side of things. And it's kind of up to you as the organization to manage the deployment, manage the upgrade, bring your systems down to be able to update the software periodically. Whereas on the SaaS side, you're kind of pushing that responsibility off to your SaaS software vendor. Same with the maintenance as well. That's typically handled by your vendor, and you typically don't even know when the software is being updated because it's so transparent in terms of them handling it behind the scenes. When we look at cloud adoption rates, this is something that is interesting. If you look at the top left corner, you can see on the left side of the pie chart there's the kind of the tan and the red slices of the pie are the SaaS and the cloud percentages of companies that are leveraging that type of solution. And so it's 26% of companies that in the last year have deployed an ERP solution were using a SaaS or cloud-based solution. And that number doesn't tell the whole story. The interesting data point to kind of add to this is that if we go back in Panorama's research, by the way, we do every year an annual ERP report where we analyze and quantify actual ERP results for hundreds of ERP implementations across the globe. So last year, we showed, our research shows that 26% of companies are using either cloud or SaaS solution.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, a lot of what Eric is saying is very true. And although ERP buyers have been slow to adopt the cloud, it appears to be taking more, they have been taking more and more interest in the cloud as of late. And a lot of the advantages that Eric just mentioned are very attractive to companies that are very ultra focused on margins in a very hyper competitive space. The ability to have more predictable costs is very important to them, and as well as requiring less administration, suits this industry very, very well. But what really also has to go hand in hand with this shift to the cloud is the shift in the software platform that ERP vendors now offer. And if you read around in the trade magazines, here's some clips that are basically saying that the Windows era is over and that, the Windows is reaching a dead end. And what they're really saying is that as you shift to the cloud and you're offering your solution, software solutions through a cloud, the devices that you'll be using are not going to be necessarily Windows devices. as you see in the marketplace, today's tablets that are out there in the field primarily use Android or Apple I operating system to access the internet, and phones as well use a myriad of operating systems to connect. So when you're talking about the mobile social cloud and running your enterprise on the cloud, you really start to look at the browser as a platform. And you can see here by one of the titles in my clips that Google is saying that the browser is the platform of the future, even on mobile devices. And you can see this trend really happening in the marketplace where more and more people are adopting tablets as their mode of computing, even on their desktop, whereas Windows probably will continue to be the primary desktop of choice for the in-house user. Users who are mobile are really using a myriad of devices, whether that be tablets or iPhones or smart devices, and their operating systems are going to vary. So there's really a trend here in the software world to move from your traditional Windows-based client to the browser. And when we do that, typically HTML5 is the language of choice for the web. Okay? And to back this up, as some of the claims here, you're going to see that there are some charts out there and a lot of industry experts that are saying that tablets will probably take over the PC marketplace in the next 2 to 3 years. So you can see that there is a dramatic shift. Even now, mobile device sales are 2 times that of PC sales. So you can see this dramatic shift in the marketplace where companies are now, their workforce is going to be suited with a multitude of devices that are not necessarily just Windows devices, but what the common thread on all these devices is the browser. Okay, so today's ERP systems really are looking towards the browser as their web client. Okay, and what does that mean? Well, first and foremost, that when you develop an ERP system through a browser, you offer anytime, anywhere computing on any device.